Alright everyone, I start off today claiming a righteous win against all the people that were nervous the other day. RFK Jr. did indeed drop out of the race and endorse Donald Trump. Technically, he only suspended his campaign, but this is part of a larger strategy. And I think Trump was involved in planning this. RFK Jr. sits on the ballot in states that are far blue and far red, where the voting really doesn't matter as much. And gobbles down mainly votes from what would be Kamala Harris support, because he is a Democrat, he's on the left wing of politics. It'll be disproportionately like Californians and New Yorkers that are protest voting against the Kamala Biden ticket. Technically Kamala Walls, but she's basically Biden 2.0 and Biden's basically Obama 2.0 as well. So he sits on the ballot there. But in the swing states, and in a couple of them, he can't actually get his name off the ballot. But he told his followers, vote Trump. And then he went on to endorse him. His speech was impassioned. If you had made this kind of speech when you were an actual candidate, you probably would have broken into the double-digit range. He's riding right now on about 5. I expect this to affect polling significantly. I expect that Trump will indeed get a huge bump from him. And now Trump's teasing out the possibility of him being health secretary or something like that. That would be hilarious. Number one, it'd be hilarious. Number two, all of those TDS sufferers, Operation Warp Speed and all that jive, I think probably most of them disappear at this point. He nuked the Democrats from orbit, though. I'm sure that they're clearly pissed. You can look at Democratic and liberal commentators right now. They're having a nervous breakdown they've been having since last night. They're still, they're on their 5th whiskey sour, and they're still tippling to stave off a hangover at the moment, and shitposting and rage posting online. The copium is severe. This is a big sea change in the election. But we've seen a bunch of those before. First, we have the incumbent completely flub at a debate in a legendary manner. Then he decides, I'm not going to run, Kamala can fucking run. The political opponent is almost shot in the head. And now you have RFK Jr., the first kind of sort of viable independent in a long time, drop and endorse, the other party, actually. His screed about the Democratic Party is like, look, we Democrats, we used to stand for togetherness and democracy and all these things, and the party has gotten away from all of these things. He is fundamentally correct, by the way. I've had the same experience. When George W. was on his way out, I considered myself a liberal. Because I didn't know about libertarianism and all these other ideologies, I was locked in that same football team mentality. 90% of the public is, so this is meaningful. I considered myself to be a liberal. I voted for Obama in 2008, for example. Quickly soured on that, but I did at the time. But the party that I thought existed at the time, and it was only a thought that it existed in that form at the time, I quickly realized this, no longer exists. There's not even a pretense. The idea of a party for the average American in general has been completely stripped away. The idea of a party that cherishes free speech is completely gone. The idea that the party supports a person's fundamental rights in any meaningful way, that's no longer the Democratic Party of today. RFK Jr. is fundamentally right. Now, I have my qualms about RFK Jr. He's an anti-gunner. I don't appreciate that. On the issue of climate change, he actually subjugates free speech to that. He came out and he said, well, if a business leader, in the energy industry especially, denies that man-made climate change is a problem, they should be put in prison. He may have been being hyperbolic, but it still doesn't go over well. He then came out in support of limitless abortions. It's very interesting. You've got the most far-left candidate of the actual race, possibly further left than Cornel West, and at least equivalent to Jill Stein on certain issues, endorsing Donald Trump because of the damage that's been done to his political party. Now, part of this is self-serving. I think that RFK Jr. feels backstabbed by the Democratic Party. and even by much of his own family. And so he's twisting in the knife. And boy, is he twisting it in good. Again, he gives one presser saying that he's standing down and, talks for about a half an hour about how the Democratic Party has effectively abandoned all sense and reason. Then he goes to the Trump rally and endorses him openly there, shakes his hand, gives him a big hug, and then talks again about the same thing. He nuked him from orbit. He screwed in the knife into their back, and I love to see it. And this is what our nation needs at the time. We do need Trump back. And RFK Jr., I think, understands that. Also, he's hedging his bets. Let's not put too fine a point on it. He's looking at the political dynamic and saying, I've got two choices. Well, technically, I've got three. My first choice is that I drop out, endorse Kamala Harris like a good bitch Democrat, and say, well, the Democratic Party represents X, Y, and Z. Nobody's going to take it seriously, but I can endorse her. But then she probably loses. So I get fucking nothing. Or I can stand as an independent candidate, I can continue, and whoever loses will call me a spoiler, and I probably lose my political career. Or I can hedge my bets with the dude that I may not ideologically like all the time, but is probably going to win, and he's going to award me a cabinet position. That's probably what's going to happen. I don't think RFK Jr. is going to end up like Chris Christie. I think he's going to end up more like the people that stood around Trump as his vanguard, and they ended up with lucrative positions. I think RFK Jr. wants to thumb his nose at his own family to some degree as well. And I wish him well in so doing. Everything else is water under the bridge. I don't like your views on a half a dozen issues, but whatever. That's perfectly fine. You endorse Trump, so you get a hall pass. I mean, this was devastating for the Democrats. Again, these were the best speeches that he's made. If he was this clearly spoken and this cerebral while he was actually actively campaigning, he would have had twice as much support. He still wouldn't have been, the president of the United States or anything like that. But he would have had more support, and therefore even more political leverage when he does inevitably drop out. It was impassioned. It's basically, look, the Democratic Party used to stand for these things. Now they stand for a bunch of bullshit. Id poll, and, massive tax hikes and wars and things like that. This isn't, and he brought up his relatives. My dad and my uncle didn't stand for this, basically. The remnant boomer Kennedyites, I'm sure, will be the most receptive to this message. By the way, I would point something out. Trump has been inching ahead with regards to the support of younger voters. His big problem has been elderly voters. The kind of people who would be receptive to this exact message. RFK Jr. just delivered Trump an enormous gift, and I hope that it's reciprocated. Look, RFK Jr. may be a derpy dude sometimes. He has some views that are clearly unconstitutional, like with guns, and some views that are a little bit bizarre. But reward him for this. He kissed ring, so, give him a pat on the head, basically, is what Trump should do. And it's funny. You get a bunch of former Democrats. It's funny that supposedly the Republicans are the party of disunity. They're falling apart. It's shattering into a million pieces. That's funny because some of the high-profile Democrats, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, etc., they keep abandoning the party. I wonder why that is. It's because their views are all throttled and weird. That's about all. Peace out.